interesting times where we communicate in this fashion. Before I say anything else, however, let me also very much do a friendly shout out to Paulette, Audrey, and to Jessan and the team of Habitat and my fellow directors, without whom it would be much harder to push Fairbuilding along its path, its journey that it's been on now for 5 years. We are definitely living in unusual times, and it's quite stunning how systemically a pandemic, the likes we're going through now, often hits those hardest that are the most disadvantaged in society anyway. Statistics show that over 500 million people have lost their jobs, and arguably many of those will be those that can afford at least to lose their livelihood. Many little businesses got closed around the world, and it's interesting. It's difficult times. It's also this time doesn't make it easier for Fairbuilding, where the NGOs tend to slow down a little bit in their activities, and the building industry has other things to worry about. But I believe that, especially in this time, we should be feeling encouraged, and we should feel called upon to work in furthering the Fairbuilding idea, to bring those that have made it their task to develop homes and shelters for the poor, that they have access to cheaper building materials and services that the building industry would support. So I hope that today's event can re-energize this process. We should walk away with a clear objective that this event will provide an extra 100 homes or shelters for families that otherwise wouldn't have it. And with that, I'd very much like to call upon all the NGOs that are partners of BCI and the building industry that has worked with us for well over 20 years to see that this can be their finest hour, to not forget those that are suffering perhaps the most under the current pandemic, and meet up in subsequent engagement forums that the team is going to be putting together, and make sure that the stream of new construction for families in the Philippines that need it most does not stop. So again, a big shout out to everybody. Really happy to join you here today, and I wish this event a lot of success, because it really deserves it. And with that, I'd like to hand back to Mia.
Thank you, Matthias. It's good to have you here with us today. And now we can really start our program to introduce to you our first speaker. He leads the Philippine Shelter Venture Lab for Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center. He brings a unique blend of more than 2 decades of development, humanitarian, DRRM, and private sector experience. Previously, he co-led in developing Catholic Relief Services cluster approach to agro-enterprise development in the Philippines, which eventually became its global model. He led in introducing cash transfer programming for Oxfam in conflict-affected areas in the country, worked in the United Nations early recovery phase after Typhoon Haiyan, and advised Save the Children's biggest DRRM program in the country. He also joined the private sector for a few years by managing sales, marketing, and collection in southern Philippines for major appliance conglomerates. Let us all welcome Mr. Jessan Catre.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Matthias. Good morning to my co-members of the network. Just a brief introduction about the Terwilliger Center. Exactly 4 years ago, Habitat for Humanity established the Terwilliger Center for Innovation in Shelter. The reason for the establishment of the center is basically to look for other or new solutions to the age-old problem of inadequate housing around the world. Globally, right now, there are 1.6 billion low-income to poor families who don't have access to adequate shelter. Especially in the times of pandemic right now, they are even more vulnerable with what is happening. So that is why we are in this webinar today to look at exactly what the problems faced by those who have inadequate shelter, and then see how the markets can respond in providing solutions. Next slide, please, Alea. So I was assigned to talk about inclusive business and see how this is relevant, especially in times of pandemic right now. We focus on the construction sector because housing is very much part of the construction and building sector in the Philippines and around the world. Next slide. The focus is on inclusive. The reason why our focus in Habitat is in an inclusive business is because in the housing market system right now in the Philippines and around the world, there are still a lot of people who are excluded in the business and in the industry and in the market. Next slide, please. So recently, we worked with the Center for Research and Communications of the University of Asia and the Pacific. They are regarded in the Philippines as the premier research center in anything related to the housing industry. They were the ones who made that seminal study in 2012 that really dug deep in looking at the housing markets or the housing industry in the Philippines, and then proposed some solutions. So a few months ago, last February, we in the Terwilliger Center and Habitat for Humanity Philippines, both members of the Fairbuilding Network, we approached CRC and said, can we look at exactly what is the housing situation right now in the country? And the study has been done and it will be released soon. And in a sense, this webinar is a glimpse of what the study is saying. So in the Philippines right now, if you look at that one, it is estimated by the year 2022, 2 years from now, basically, there will be 15 million who won't have access to adequate shelter. That's a very, very big gap. And if you look at the graphs right now, there is that unserved segment, 39%. 34% are in the socialized housing segment. In the housing industry right now, that would be the lowest type of housing project. And then 14% in the economic segment, and then 13% in the other segment. What that graph represents is that even before COVID, there has been a substantial disinvestments, both by the private sector and the public player in the bottom of the pyramid of the housing market. And that unserved segment is really a segment wherein practically no market actors are doing anything in that sphere except for hardwares and retailers. So what we're saying in the Terwilliger Center is that there is already a crisis even before COVID came, because a lot of Filipino people don't have access to adequate shelter. What we have also found out is that even before pandemic, over the course of the previous years, there has been a downward trend of developers and market actors building socialized housing in the Philippines. And that part of the unserved segment of the population that has been unserved since the study has started in 2012 is still being unserved by both the private sector and the public actors. Next slide, please. So what does that mean in terms of numbers? In terms of numbers, the projection is, if you look at the slide there, The unserved towards the high end of the market. The unserved represents those poor and low-income families. The socialized are housing projects that right now are valued at about ₱500,000 to more than ₱500,000. That's the socialized housing. Right now, the gap is 4.8 million houses. In the economic housing segment, about house projects that are worth more than ₱500,000 to 1 million in terms of unit, there is a gap, a backlog of 303,000. In the low cost, there's a backlog of 600,000 units. There is actually a surplus of housing in the mid-cost and high-end. So what developers are doing right now is rushing towards developing more housing projects at the mid-cost and high-end to the point that there is surplus or glut right now. But there are practically few investors in building projects in the economic and socialized segment. And that segment will continue to grow in the coming years. And in the recent COVID study that we have conducted, the study is showing that that growth is already slowing down right now. Next slide, please. So what does that mean in terms of number? That unserved segment equals around 13.2 million Filipinos. If you include everything else, that unserved segment, and you include the socialized housing and economic housing segment, that represents 1 out of 4 Filipinos in the Philippines right now having no access to adequate shelter. And in times of COVID, that's very much alarming because, you know, people cannot shelter safely in place and they cannot physically distance themselves if they don't have adequate shelter and they're not protected from the pandemic. But we did, in the study with CRC, we did ask them, being an economist, what exactly is the market value of this unserved segment? Those who are doing, those who are building houses themselves, the owner-driven segment. It is estimated that this is worth $13 billion or roughly 640 billion pesos. This is how big the market is, and this is how much potential this can provide to those who would like to invest in this segment of the market. Unfortunately, in this segment of the population, they can only afford 1% of the market value in this segment. That is why we are also calling for financial service provider to invest in this segment of the market. Next slide, please. So this is what happened when COVID hit the Philippines from March and until now. We conducted a market assessment of what COVID has done in the housing markets, starting in April, that ended in June. And these are the highlights of what we have found out. Unsurprisingly, most of the projects in the housing industry has slowed down by 12% on average. And even government housing projects have decreased. There is delay in terms of the delivery of said projects. And global data has shown that in the construction industry, there is really a slowdown. That is why the government right now is trying to revive the industry with its build projects. Demand for housing loans has also decreased, and processing time because of the lockdowns has affected both public and private loan facilities. In times of COVID, house repairs are still needed, and it is estimated that 70% of the houses of the low-income segment do need to repair their houses. Especially right now when there are more people staying at home, than working outside. House building plans and house building have suspended for most in the lockdown areas because they have prioritized food and medicine. Next slide, please. So what the pandemic has, 52% of low-income families have also stopped working. 80% of them are mostly financing their own repairs. And 18% of the respondents that were interviewed said they don't have any plan in terms of restarting their home upgrades. Almost 70% of them have not been able to save because all the money that came in are being spent on food and medicine. Next slide, please. It has also impacted the whole supply chain, with micro, small, and medium enterprise businesses reporting a drop in their revenue. 50 to 60% from those manufacturers interviewed, and 87% for those retailers interviewed. For those in the retail distribution front, those interviewed, they said they would be needing an average of 41 million pesos per retailer to jumpstart their business. Half of the construction projects in lockdown areas have been suspended or canceled, and there is an additional cost for those resuming businesses because of the need to comply with safety protocols. Next slide, please. So in the analysis that we have made, we have seen that in the housing industry, there is still hope in terms of reviving it. The industry doesn't need a reboot. It can still be revitalized with critical support both from the public and private sector. That is why in our mapping, we have placed the housing industry, especially the low-income segment, in the revitalized part. Next slide, please. But we do see that this market will reemerge. The need for shelter is perennial. More and more people will need to be housed safely. And those in the private sector who will be able to position themselves in the regrowth of the market will better reap the reward if they prepare early right now. That is why we in Habitat, through the Terwilliger Center, is calling for partnerships for businesses to be more inclusive by targeting this emerging market. We are calling for innovations, calling for attentions and investment to really serve this 13 million market in the Philippines worth $13 billion. Next slide, please. So we do see the big role of the private sector in this one. And we would like to partner with those interested to do so. Next slide, please. Next slide, Leah. What the Terwilliger Center can do is really work with private sector and civil society and even public actors to use market-based approaches to make sure that our work will lead to scale and will be sustainable. The center can provide advisory services. We can provide even access to capital and access to information and research. Next slide, please. The Terwilliger Center has also recently launched its Shelter Tech Accelerator program for Southeast Asia. There is an ongoing application for small but growing businesses, be it by individuals or firms, to join the Shelter Tech Accelerator program and be supported. This is for startups and for those needing acceleration support. Lastly, next slide, Alea, last slide. So if you want to get in touch with us and partner with us, we are a member of the Fairbuilding Network ourselves. You will see in your screen our contact information. Thank you, Alea and Mia. That's it for my session.
Thank you for that very informative presentation, Mr. Jessan Catre. You really did share these valuable points that doing inclusive business can go digital, especially that people will still need homes. And COVID-19 has made that need for a better shelter more highlighted. And again, may I please remind our participants to please mute your microphones when you are not speaking. Thank you very much. For our next discussion, we are now moving to how we can push digitalization in the commercial space of the construction sector. To discuss about BCI's web-based platform, Archify, let us all welcome the product manager of Archify, Mr. Mark Bueta.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me, our FBN team, for this event or for this webinar. So, okay, I'm tasked to introduce the Archify platform of BCI Asia. So, again, just to have a quick brief background. So nowadays, we are in a most uncertain situations. So basically, BCI is streamlining and doing innovations and solutions for our digital platforms to help the building and construction industry. So basically, Archify, it's an online based platform. You can search that. That's archify.com. It's intended to help the product suppliers. It's also intended to help the design professionals, the building owners, the developers, the end users of the building and construction industry, or even individuals. So basically, okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So, okay, in Archify, we are, you can showcase, you can connect, you can discover your products. If you are into a product supplier, or if you are looking for a certain product supplier, or if you are looking for certain designs, you can see it in Archify. You can inquire from Archify. You can ask for details on the Archify platform. So because nowadays you are very limited to doing face-to-face meeting, doing online, site meeting, project meetings, because of this current situation. We want to help you connect with your certain design professionals, product supplier, to just continue the industry. So it can help you build also a portfolio that will increase your branding and brand awareness of your company. So, okay, next slide. Yeah. So the reality now, B2B, the B2B industry is getting on the online platform. So because back in the days, we are used in the B2B projects, or in the building and construction industry, we're used to talking face-to-face with engineers, with developers, with architects, or with product suppliers, that what fits our projects in the building industry. So nowadays, in our latest research, it's now growing. So maybe it's more than 12% nowadays that the sales or the B2B industry is getting on the online platform, or getting in a digital way of doing the sales. So the key takeaway here is, if you don't innovate, rarely survive. So that's why nowadays the digital presence is required, or it has a strong basis nowadays. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah. So now again, it's on the statistics. It's 42% of the companies report higher order values from the B2B sales. So basically, if you are looking or you are going on the selling your products right now in the new normal, if you don't have a strong digital presence, basically you would rarely survive, or most you cannot survive nowadays. So okay, next slide please. Yeah, so I'll discuss some of the features of Archify. So this is from the product supplier's perspective. So in Archify, we can create brand awareness, we can create branding through this online platform. So again, in Archify, we want you to have a more strong digital presence in the building and construction industry. So you can create a profile page for a company, so showcasing your areas of expertise, product ranges to active design professionals or to your target market. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so downloadables, you can input here brochures, spec documents, or any file that is ready to be downloaded by your target market. So if you are seeking for an architect or for a developer or a design and build, you can showcase here any file that is ready for them, that your technical specs or specifications that fits with their projects. So it's more easy to sell, it's more easy to communicate with your target market. Okay, next slide please. Okay, so articles, you can also post here articles or blog with your company, which again creates branding and also awareness with your target market. So nowadays, some of our target market is looking for some reviews, looking for some articles, looking for some blogs that would help them understand what they need for their projects. That's why in Archify, you can post it also here. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, okay, so specific informations, company certification, standards, and awards, you can also post it here. That is relevant for your target market. So basically, if they're looking for some certifications or some standards for their project, we can also post it in Archify page. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, for the owners or the developers or the end users, for the architects also, design and build, that are looking for certain product suppliers or certain projects, you can create in Archify My Library tool. So it's one of the features that you can save products. You can also collect to keep it handy at all times. So it means that if you want to save a certain, let's say, furniture, or you want to save a certain paint, roofing product that would be used to your, let's say, for an NGO project or an commercial project, you can save it in Archify. So at least from here, you can see the specifications, the details of the specific product that you're looking to. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, you can also create a mood board in Archify. That's one also helpful tool. Here you can visualize, share design ideas in customizable boards. So you can discover it once you have signed up with Archify. So once you have signed up with Archify, you can create your certain mood boards to have a picture of what you want on your certain projects. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a sample of the mood board. Yeah, so if you are into fit out, or in your project is into on the finish side of construction or exterior side, you can visualize. So you can create a mood board here. Yeah. So again, making it easy, making it accessible to your projects. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are building a Archify page of Fairbuilding. It's very soon, so you can check their projects, their updates also on the Archify page and also on the Fairbuilding website. So if you want to know more about them, tag your brands and communicate with them easily, you can check them out on Archify very soon. So okay, the key takeaway for my discussion is we want to have a higher or global reach when it comes to nowadays. So this platform will find new markets. You can known for nationwide or globally. So with a lower cost. So basically, our also target here is to reduce or to decrease your costing when it comes to, let's say, for your marketing or sales purposes. So definitely, if you have a profile in Archify, it would lower your costs. That enables you to reach your target audience. So also here you can personalize. So personalization of your profile. So at least the customer database can be linked also to your website, or others can visit your profile page. Even I'm an owner or I'm just an individual that would have a project, I can visit and then I can personalize anytime I want my page. So again, we want to improve and take advantage of the digital tool nowadays. So again, we are streamlining all of our digital platforms to help the building and construction industry. So okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so you can follow us on Facebook and also in Instagram for any questions. You can also chat in the chat box below for any questions regarding Archify, or you can contact us directly through FBN or through BCI Asia. So just visit our page for the property owners, for the developers. It's a free sign up. You can sign up for free. You can create a profile for free. And then for the product supplier, if you want to know more about our services, how can we help you have a strong digital presence, have been known to create brand awareness of our products, just contact us and then we can discuss, we can arrange a meeting with your company. Yeah, so again, thank you for having us in Archify on behalf of Archify team. We are glad to have with this webinar. So again, thank you and have a great day ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Bueta. It really just goes to show that technology has made all these services more available, and platforms like Archify has made the need for an online one-stop shop more needed in this day and age. Now, we have finally come to the highlight of this program. We've already discussed inclusive business to bridge the gap between business and the base of the pyramid. And we talked about e-commerce and how platforms are making services more available online. And now we will tackle how we can continue to do good through the digital plane. To discuss Fairbuilding's launching of its new external website, I would like to introduce to you the Research Manager of BCI Australia and Administrative Manager of the Fairbuilding Network, Ms. Ayn Rand Parel.
Thanks very much, Mia, and good morning to everyone. Thanks for coming in today, and we haven't seen everyone in a while. I think this is the first time that we are actually seeing our partners in the network come together for a much wider gathering. And locally in BCI and Fairbuilding, everyone has also been working from home, so it's really good to see everyone safe and healthy. It is personally validating and motivating to know that the network continues to be invested in our work and mission. And when I say the network, I don't just refer to BCI staff or the Fairbuilding team, but I refer to everyone who is currently a member, and to everyone also who are not current members, but took the time to took the time and energy to come in and learn more about what's missing and what can be done. Matthias talked a little bit about how the pandemic has slowed certain construction projects. Um, Sir Jessan basically gave us a situationer about the ongoing damage and this scary outlook about how the pandemic is affecting housing, and not just the lack of actual housing but the lack of adequate housing as well. Mark from Archify basically showed us as well that there are tools to keep up, that digitalization is going to be a very effective weapon against this pandemic, that there's a lot of space for the private businesses to survive. And hopefully, with the Fairbuilding Network, we can link all of those together. We can meet the demand with proper supply, and it is going to be up to all the members of the network, the social building partners, and the industry partners to proactively make an impact in this shortage. So just to further that situation, we are in a paradox where we have been limited. At the beginning of the year, at the beginning of March, when we did the quarantine, I asked the team, how are the projects going? And there's obviously a slowdown. But at the same time, with this limit in mobility, with this limit in expenses and costs, and it feels like the world has slowed down a little bit, it also feels like the world is a little more connected, and that has given us that's opened a lot of doors. It's opened a lot of opportunities for us to collaborate more, maybe in a less personal physical dimension, but it hopefully we can continue to be more intimate, and we can continue to act as a team and as a network. I guess we're ready for the slides, Alea. Yeah, so I think everyone or most of the attendees are already familiar with Fairbuilding Network. Although I think through the years, we have already sort of let go of what exactly was the initial mission of Fairbuilding. So Fairbuilding is first and foremost supposedly a free online platform. So even before the pandemic, it was already designed as a digital tool to make a wider impact. It helps nonprofit organizations with building projects and social housing developers to connect with building product suppliers, contractors, subcontractors, architects, and engineers who are willing to help. It's basically an online bulletin saying, these are the projects that are off the radar. Anyone who is willing to raise their social profile or wants to give back or have excess and can give supply to this demand are free to join. Next slide, please. All right, and with the vision and the mission, it's very clear. It's to alleviate poverty and improve livelihoods, ensure a decent home for everybody. We have been greatly boosted by our partnership also with Habitat in terms of giving us data about understanding the gap in housing. But at the same time, we also don't want to be seen as a fully charitable institution in such a way that we are here to build houses. We are also here to enable an untapped marketplace, enable construction with a conscience, and do well by doing good and do good by doing well. Next slide, please. So I think for the most part, everyone or most of the attendees understand how Fairbuilding works. Initially, as you know, you're already familiar with Hershey, with Alea and Mia. Their mission is to make connections, is to expand the network by meeting with social building developers like NGOs, by meeting with industry partners such as the product suppliers and construction service providers. And while it was our ideal mission when Fairbuilding was first launched to empower these organizations to use our online platform, it did not quite work. But at the same time, it's also given us a lesson in terms of conducting, or in terms of building relationships. And over the years, we have what seemed to be a tasky process for us, meeting our partners in person, doing engagement forums in person to try and connect these two entities. It has become a unique pride of Fairbuilding that while we are using our main strength, our core business, our core strength in giving back to the community and making an impact in reducing the housing gap, that we do it in a very, in our own genuine way. It has its advantages, obviously, because it gives a very raw and very straightforward, honest, genuine insight into what we are trying to achieve. And it has proven to be effective, but at the same time, it can also be limiting in such a way that obviously with 3 people, you can only meet as many people and you can only do so much. But I think that we would rather have started doing that sort of approach where we build relationships first before we start really scaling up and automating and oiling the machinery, and as they say, cooking with gas. BCI has been lucky to be one of the companies that can operate remotely and can be what we call an essential partner. As Mark has explained, and those who are familiar also with BCI's lead manager, BCI products are all online. And now that people are relying so much on online products, on online interaction, BCI is becoming more and more relevant. And with that in our mindset, we are hoping also that Fairbuilding can keep up and become also an essential partner, not just to the social building partners, but also to our industry partners as well. Like I mentioned, you know, when I explain what Fairbuilding does, there is nothing really new to the message. We want to close the gap. We want to encourage inclusive business. We want to tap an untapped marketplace. We want to widen our radar. And I think the pandemic has only shed a light on how relevant this is more than ever and how more urgent the mission has become. So next slide, please. So just to give you a bit of a backgrounder on what we had been doing for the past 6 years, we had been offering opportunity to raise the company social profile. So for the private companies or industry partners that have been part of Fairbuilding, we offered marketing services. We basically, by giving them information about ongoing nonprofit projects, we are able to extend the sales of the potential sales of these companies. And like I mentioned a while ago, one of the unique processes within Fairbuilding is facilitating relationship building through personal engagement forums. And I will be focusing more on how we are transforming engagement forums from physical to digital, from without necessarily lessening the intimacy of that process, because we do believe that um, engagement forums are an effective way to really scale up and to really have tangible results. It's not really just about looking at studies. It's not talking about concepts or talking about the missions, but actually taking action with tangible, time measured, measurable effects or impact. We also offer suppliers an opportunity to engage with projects to help the underprivileged. Most of these things the team have already spoken to you about. Um, so I guess the mission for Fairbuilding as we go into the new normal is to, you know, what is the new normal when we cannot anymore meet each other in person. So that is the challenge, while also need answering the call to scale up, because we cannot just limit our meetings, we cannot limit our engagement on one projects. How can we make it 100 projects? How can we make it 1,000 projects? And keep up with the damage that this pandemic is inflicting on us. Next slide. All right. I guess just to give you a bit of an overview on the success stories for Fairbuilding and how effective the physical or the actual engagement forums have been. These are just some of the tangible results or tangible impact. Cavitech Solutions, which is an IT company, has donated 10 computer sets to the Gatan School. They generously donated computer units and CCTVs to the Gatan Family Farm School last year, and this has helped obviously more than 100 students. And this also goes to show that Fairbuilding isn't just limited to construction-related activities, but also beyond that. Next slide, please. Another success story is pre-pandemic is Panasonic's donation of electrical items to several NGO partners. One also of the services that Fairbuilding has offered to some of our industry partners is as a referral partner. Sometimes we will have industry partners who have an excess of supply and don't quite know how to select the right beneficiaries, and they have this really high requirement to be transparent about how their products are used. So they rely on Fairbuilding to select the beneficiaries for them and also distribute or allocate these available donations. So Panasonic has turned over 2,894 units of light switches and 250 units of electrical outlets, which were donated exclusively to partners of Fairbuilding. And the donated items amounted to a total of more than 400,000 pesos. Next slide, please. During the pandemic, the work hasn't stopped. Some of the construction projects have slowed down, but our willingness to be present and our willingness to help and make an impact is still there. And like I mentioned, beyond construction, we continue also to make an impact in other sectors. So one example is CNE Publishing gave free access to the online library. And speaking of digitalization, they have given free access to online libraries and books to NGO partners, which basically is the fruit of their first engagement with Fairbuilding. CNE also donated physical books to St. Francis Integrated School, which amounted to more than 28,000 pesos, which seems like a little, but I think that no one is stranger to our current challenges right now with homeschooling in the Philippines and the challenges with providing everyone with the right homeschool materials and providing everyone with the right connection. So we are very grateful that we have agencies, we have organizations that continue to help out. Next slide, please. We also have Emerald Vinyl Corp donating PVC pipes to one of our NGO partners, Accord Philippines. They have donated PVC pipes amounting to 120,000 pesos, and the items were used to build temporary quarantine facility in an amphitheater in Malabon. Now, these are just 4 or 5 tangible stories about or success stories about how engagement forums can be very effective and how relationship building, and obviously this is an exhibition of the hard work that the team has done, as well as the willingness of our industry partners to contribute to this mission. But imagine this effort being digitized, imagine this effort being automated, imagine this effort going beyond just a team of 3 people. There's a lot that we can do because there's definitely supply and there's definitely a willingness from the private sector to act in this marketplace. Next slide, please. Lastly, Filtrat Timber donated set of wood for 1 unit of EQF, quarantine facility, basically amounting to 85,200 pesos. And I think when we started the quarantine, one of the hot projects that we have been helping coordinate materials for are actually isolation facilities and quarantine facility projects. So if you do have related projects that are related to quarantine facilities, please contact the Fairbuilding team so we can help you look for more suppliers as well. Next slide. We have another success story. Wood items from Sumex Trading donating electrical materials amounting to 15,754, and Holcim giving a discount to one of our partner NGOs, a total of 114,000 worth of discount for cement products. If we don't have I think this is the last slide. So going back to what I mentioned earlier, we have shown tangible, stories. These are our proof of concept that there's a lot that can be done, but these are so intimate, and these are not possible without the effort of Hershey, of Mia and Alea, and without also the cooperation of our partner networks. Now, the mission becomes greater and it becomes more urgent because, as Sir Jessan said, there's millions of backlogs. So this year, it is Fairbuilding's goal to go beyond our usual operations and make more aggressive approaches to ensuring that we cover more ground. Our mission is to scale up. We want to be able to transform the Fairbuilding network to be automated and self-populating. We want to go beyond partnering with our current network and be more inclusive, basically. Do B2C approach, empower consumers at the bottom of the pyramid, maybe eventually make the platform accessible to individual homeowners, of course vetted by Fairbuilding. Provide not just tools, not just materials, but also maybe skills to our fellow Filipinos so that they are empowered to have their own adequate shelter by acting as aggregators of information on supply, demand, and support. Again, we want to activate an untapped market, and as Sir Jessan has mentioned, unserved segments. And as far as our private company partners, let's open micro economies. Now, as part of that approach, Fairbuilding is launching a new external website. You may find that the information that's displayed is the same, but we are developing an internal website that will eventually be more inclusive, be more self-populating, and be more automated. So I'll just share my screen to give you a bit of an idea about what our Bueta external website looks like and how you can utilize this as a tool to share information and to acquire information as well. So I suppose, can everyone give me a nod, Sir Jessan, if you can see my screen? Yes, all right, okay. So this is the brand new Fairbuilding website. Let me just do a full screen here. I won't go into in each of the segments. I'll just do a quick overview. So here's a brief overview of who we are and what we do, a video that we did during our launching when Fairbuilding was first launched. Pretty much all the attendees of this webinar understand how it works, but if you are not familiar and you want to have an access to the online tool that Fairbuilding has, we will give you free login to our database. I would say it's a little bit similar to Archify, except that there would be more information such as bill of quantities made available or downloadable via our internal website. So what are the things that you can do with the Fairbuilding website? Number one, it's to promote your construction project. If you are a social building developer, you can upload details about your project and we will help you connect with committed suppliers. For our construction suppliers, our private partners, you can access construction project leads, extend your sales, increase your brand visibility, and give back to the community by connecting with organizations that need your products and services. And you can also be a supporter or a sponsor for Fairbuilding to also help us with our operations if you believe in the kind of mission that we do. Now, I think this is the most interesting part for everyone, and this is where our call to action will basically center on. This is the current impact of the network. Internally, as a team, we have our own KPIs about where we want, what sort of numbers we want to see by the end of the financial year. But I implore everyone in this webinar to consider this also as your goal. Right now, we are able to have 45 million pesos in savings on donations brought about by the discounts that our private partners have given us. This is comprised of 305 successful transactions, meaning successful donations, successful buy and sell. There are currently 303 projects in the system, and we know we are barely scratching the surface at this point. There are millions of potential projects to be developed. There are millions of projects that are currently being developed but are not being reported and are not being looked at. Right now, we have impacted 900 families with a roof over their heads, with livelihood centers, school renovations, and we have in turn have impacted 1,395 children. And I think that everyone will agree with me that this is not nearly enough. We have a mission to increase these numbers. Of course, one day at a time, one time period at a time. Matthias earlier mentioned, let's ensure that after this webinar, before the calendar year ends, before the financial year ends, let's increase this number. Let's increase this 900 families to 1,000 families. And Fairbuilding will help jumpstart these projects by holding engagement forums in the next few months. But we encourage our social building partners, we encourage our social industry partners and our design partners to help us increase and update these numbers. Sneak preview of the current projects that we are reporting or our featured projects. But if you would like to see more projects as well as the details, including actual building elements and components, current members of Fairbuilding have or supposedly have login access to our internal database. So if I log in, because this is a beta version, I'm expecting a bit of a slowdown. All right, so after logging in, all Fairbuilding network partners, particularly industry partners, this is basically your project leads dashboard for non-government or non-profit projects that can help you extend your sales, or that can give you leads on where to put your excess materials, or basically give you leads on which organizations you can engage with. Now, I'm not going to go through the details of each of these segments, but I'm just going to focus on latest projects and show you one of the current projects that we are currently working on. Okay, let's see. I'm not quite sure if it's the server or the internet connection. But while we are waiting for that page to load, there are many different functions or features that you can use when using the Fairbuilding website. You can make customized project searches. You can bookmark the projects that you are interested in and put them in your project watch list. You can search for partner NGOs of Fairbuilding. You can also use this as your extra CRM, because you can also add information you can use it as a CRM, and you can add in information about how your company can engage with other entities. And of course, you also have you can also bookmark certain organizations or companies and put them under your watch list. So this is a growing database, and this is exactly what Fairbuilding was originally designed for. We wanted our network to log into this website and populate it automatically, and then without having or needing the assistance of the team. But as have been said time and again, we think that at the beginning we had to hold everyone's hand and really show them that it actually works. And now that we know that it works, it's time to scale up. Let me see where we are with the latest projects. I think we're having some technical issues there. Let's try again. All right. Well, if it's going to take too long, I will be more than happy to do a separate demo for our partner members who would like to have a sneak peek into this feature of the database. But basically, if you click on latest projects, it shows you a list of the current nonprofit projects that Fairbuilding is currently reporting on. When you click on that construction project, it shows you details about that project, who the contact person is, what are their contact details, what materials are going to be needed, when is construction expected to commence, what's the construction value, and so on and so forth. You can tag the contact person as well, send them a direct message, and basically start independently engaging with the entire network. So right now, we are working with this database, but we are also meaning to scale it up within or very soon, within the year, I would say. And apart from expanding the network, meaning having more members and having more, I'll stop sharing now for a bit. Apart from having more members, we also want to make sure that we are able to create a functional, transformational application or platform that enables everyone to engage automatically in a quicker manner within a wider coverage. So I guess in showing to you the external website and having a sneak peek into the internal database, our call to action is let's keep up. Let's innovate. As Mark has said, if we don't innovate, we won't survive. The threat of the pandemic is intimidating enough as it is, and even before that, we already have a big mountain to climb. So let's go beyond what our current process is right now. Let's make our engagement forums. Let's transform it into engagement forums, like what we are doing now. Let's go digital and be more aggressive. Let's create a space in the online platforms. Let's build on the relationships that we have formed in the last 6 years and double, triple, quadruple our coverage and our impact. Let's make use of engagement forums. And when I say engagement forums, I mean online involvement. It means having more conversations. Fairbuilding will be providing an e-platform that will enable everyone to do more of that. And just to have a tangible, measurable achievement of our mission, let's do an additional 100 houses. Let's do an additional 100 roofs over 100 more families. And that's basically the mission of Fairbuilding, one project at a time. And with that, I end my segment. Please do take care of yourselves, and if you can, someone else too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ayn. Thank you for discussing how Fairbuilding has faced the challenges brought about by the pandemic and how Fairbuilding wants to move forward into digitizing our way of connecting the construction sector to our partner social developers. And with that, we are hoping that more partners of Fairbuilding will be able to utilize our new website and database portal. And now at this portion, we are now welcoming to field in any questions from our participants as we start our question and answer portion and talk about how the digital transformation in the construction industry in this time of pandemic. Please just type into our participants. Just please type in your questions in the chat box, and our guest speakers will answer them for you. For this part of the program, we also encourage and request our participants to turn on your videos if you want, so we can also see each other. Again, you may type your questions in the chat box so it can be recognized. So, we do actually have a few questions from the email sent to us earlier, so we'll start with this one. So the first question is actually addressed to all the speakers. So Ms. Ayn, Sir Jessan, and Mr. Mark Bueta. The question is, based on the trends influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic, it really seems that digital is the way to go. Do you see this as something that will continue even after the pandemic is over? And what do you see are the country's main challenges in pushing digitalization forward? So whoever wants to answer first from our speakers, you may answer the question.
Hi, Mia.
Jessan.
We recently commissioned a study of how information and communication technology is playing a big role in the housing industry, especially for those in the class D to E, what we term as the emerging market or the unserved segment. And they are actually plugged into the digital ecosystem all over the Philippines. And their primary means of engagement is through Facebook and YouTube. So they get their information usually from TV and radio, but TV and radio are also into the digital realm. So there is a blending of both the mainstream traditional analog media and the digital media. So for those homeowners and those segment of the population that are unserved, they are plugged in by using Facebook and by using YouTube. So we do see that is the way forward as well, especially in times of pandemic when there is a need to physically distant. Even after this pandemic is over, at least this current pandemic is over, we do see the role of digital increasing as well, or continuing to increase, because we do see the need for the right information to reach the population at scale and at speed. So yes to your question, Mia.
Thank you, Sir Jessan. And again, to our participants, you can type in your questions in our Zoom group chat. And again, the question is addressed to all our speakers. So Ms. Ayn, do you have anything to add regarding this question? I can repeat the question for you. So the question is, based on the trends influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic, it really seems that digital is the way to go. Do you see this as something that will continue even after the pandemic is over? And what do you see are the country's main challenges in pushing digitalization forward?
Yeah, I think even before the pandemic, digitalization is already the way to go. I don't think there's any other direction that we would go other than to go online. But I do think that the challenge is access, particularly in the Philippines. I think that private companies have started relying on e-commerce to extend their businesses. Private individuals, basically everyone's online. You order food, you grab a taxi, you watch movies, everything. I've never actually met with any friends since the quarantine. Everything's been online, but I think there's a lot of pressure on government as well as service providers to ensure that as many people stay connected as possible, because particularly within the Fairbuilding interest, or with the interest of Habitat, where we are looking at an underprivileged sector, I guess the question is, while are they connected? So I think there's a separate conversation altogether about, you know, for the initial problem is housing, and even if they have a house, would they have actual internet connection? So I think that's more the underlying challenge.
Thank you, Ms. Ayn, for answering the question. And of course, from Archify, Mr. Mark Bueta, do you have anything to add regarding the question sent from our email?
Yeah. So hi. Yeah. To answer the question, yes, definitely agree with Miss Ayn and Sir Jessan. So definitely, yeah, even before the pandemic, the only way to go is to innovate, going digital. So digital transformation is very crucial, especially nowadays. When I talk with different suppliers, developers, property owners in the building construction industry, definitely all of them, they're trying to do the digital way from the traditional way. So there's a difference between traditional and digital way. So definitely they're more adapting it nowadays because they see that they can reach more audience, or they can reach more people through the digital way. And then the advantage also is nowadays, especially this pandemic, companies are going on to aligning their budgets, getting other budgets crossed out. So definitely, if you are gonna do the digital way, it's more a lower cost. It's a most cost effective way of doing your sales, of doing business transactions, or also getting to reach certain target markets. So I believe going the digital way would help different companies. And then I'm looking only at one disadvantage is that it would be the changing customer experience, or the changing experience from the management. So definitely, if you're more onto the traditional way, you would have a time to adapt with what you are doing right now to what you would do right now. So definitely, but that's why BCI Asia is here also to help these certain industries, especially in the building construction industries. Yeah, to help them align, to help them discover how we can help, how we can do the digital way or the digital transformation for their company. Yeah, that's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Mark Bueta. And I can see we have a question from the Zoom group chat. The question is sent by Mr. Paulo Antonio Pereira, and the question is addressed to Mr. Jessan Catre of Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center. So the question, Mr. Jessan, is what's the reason for the backlog unserved market in the housing industry?
Yes, thank you for the question. The reason for that is there is this basic assumption that those needing houses need new houses. So it's either you live in Riverside, or you are in an area wherein you are need to be relocated, or you are very poor. And then the solution is to build new houses for you. So that's the basic assumption in the Philippines and actually in most countries in the world. So the solution is build new houses. In our case, build subdivision or build housing projects. That unserved segment is the reality that most low-income families, and actually even middle income, they incrementally build houses. They upgrade over time. So that's why we call them the owner-driven construction. You know, you first start with houses with low quality and then improve them over time, move to cement, and eventually a very beautiful house that you turn over to your kids. So that's an unserved segment of the market that is not being looked into both by the government and the market itself, except for the hardware stores. In the pandemic has really opened up this reality that people are incrementally building their houses over time, and they also need support. So that's one. The backlog in the socialized housing is a bit different in terms of its problem, is because in the Philippines there is a pricing gap as to how much you can only price your socialized housing unit. And developers are really complaining that that one is limiting their business because cost of material, cost of labor, not to mention cost of land are increasing. So they're finding it really hard to make it a viable business for them. I guess there is also a need to update the incentives in that sphere of the segment of the market. But then again, we're saying that that emerging market, that unserved market is a growing market. It will become, it will reemerge as well after the pandemic. Not even after the pandemic, because in the Philippines right now, there are areas in the country where they have started repairing and upgrading their houses.
Yeah.
I hope I answered your question.
Paul.
The question is from Mr. Paulo.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sir Jessan, for answering the question, and Mr. Paulo for sending in your question. I can see we have another one from the Zoom group chat. The question is from Ms. Patricia Mirasol. The question is, what's the process for vetting both suppliers and buyers in the platforms? Are there any prerequisites for joining the Fairbuilding and Archify platforms? Thank you. I guess this one can be answered by Ms. Ayn and Mr. Mark Bueta of Archify. Ms. Ayn?
Yes, thanks for the question, Ms. Patricia Mirasol. Right now, generally how we recruit partners of the network is for non-government organizations. We enter into a memorandum of understanding about information, because we do publish this project information in our database. Sorry for the background noise. I think that's a sign for me to give the floor to Matthias. He said he's happy to give his 10 cents worth. Matthias.
Yeah, let me give you a few thoughts. One thought is I keep on hearing after the pandemic. I think we have to make peace with the fact that the pandemic will be around in different ways for quite a while. So like we at BCI are assuming for a year or so, even if we're slightly up the line of access to a vaccine, we assume that there's going to be some sort of social distancing, a hesitation to come back to the office to work. That's going to be around for a while. And I think that's just something we have to come to terms with, and where we have to say, okay, let's just not kid ourselves. Let's make that work. Let's find ways of working together and providing our services in that environment. That led immediately to the conclusion, okay, we're going to be working remotely quite a bit, and that has several aspects. Within a week, as I was saying earlier, within a week we moved 650 people to their homes and fitted them out with laptops, and the business basically took a dip for a few months and is broadly back to where it is. That is sort of typical for companies like us that have an educated workforce and that is IT literate, and that will more and more pull people into these roles. Digitization, I think it was McKinsey that made the statement, the speed of digitization was such in the last few months that within 2 months, as much progress was made, as much digitization progressed, as would have normally been the case in 2 years. So with that, it's going to be around, it's going to be with us. The thing that I find really interesting is the pervasive availability of smartphones around the world. And everybody, even if they have difficulties accessing regular food, accommodation, access to water, and medical services, chances are many people have smartphones. And there's business models out there, the sharing economy, crowdsourcing, there's business models out there that are quite exciting for us, I think, where particularly the part of the market that Jessan talked about, you know, imagine there's hundreds and perhaps hundreds of thousands of home builders that would love to improve their homes if they only had access to less expensive roofing material, less expensive hollow block or insulation or whatever. I think this is an area that the Fairbuilding concept will morph towards, where apart from working with the intermediaries, which are the NGOs that offer building services for the poor, but only like in our world, you know, there's several hundreds over a few years. My vision is really that we're going to see a system up where there is legitimate, vetted, very poor, if you will, although I hate the word, legitimate people that are looking to access building materials for free or for at least for a significant discount so that they can move ahead, that we would have by now sufficient credibility with the building industry to say, okay, here's, you know, 10s, 20, 30,000 private home builders. You've got the materials, you've got B grade, C grade material, you want to offload some things, but you also want to help those in need. And suddenly there's that, what we've been trying to establish for a long time, there's a much faster turnaround of, you know, expressing a need and having it serviced, expressing a need and having it serviced. So that's sort of the ambition where we're thinking, and with the progress in cloud computing, with the higher bandwidth of internet generally available, although there are obviously limitations for some socio-demographics in the population, but we do see an opportunity to actually scale things up much more significantly doing that. So it took a little bit longer to express what I was thinking, but there you go.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for answering the question of Miss Patricia Mirasol from Business World. Again, if you have any more questions, please type it in our Zoom group chat. I think we have our last at least 10 minutes. We actually have one last question. This one is addressed to Mr. Jessan Catre. So the question is, what does a partnership with you, Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center, entail? Are you open to working with any kind of group?
Yes, we are very much willing to work primarily with the private sector, big businesses, small but growing businesses, micro, medium scale, and big corporations. We are also willing to work with other entities like non-government and even government entities. Everyone in the market systems.
Thank you, Sir Jessan. So I guess this is where our question and answer portion will end. If you have any more questions, please feel free to email us at info@fairbuilding.org and we'll get back to you. Again, thank you very much to all our guest speakers, Mr. Jessan Catre of Habitat for Humanity's Terwilliger Center, Mr. Mark Bueta of PCI's Archify, and Ms. Ayn Rand Parel of the Fairbuilding Network and of course, our CEO and founder, Mr. Matthias Groups. Thank you for gracing us with your presence today. And that concludes our program on Going Digital in the Construction Sector, Inclusive Business in Time of COVID-19. For partnerships and inquiries, please email info@fairbuilding.org. And to all our attendees and participants, thank you very much for giving us your time and have a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Keep
Thank
safe,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So those requests.